Montana Territory. Spring of 1878, the sky cracked open with thunder as Cora Ellison's wagon wheels snapped on the edge of the swollen Gallatin River, tossing her hard into the mud. Rain poured without pause, turning the prairie to soup, the river beside her roaring like a beast let loose. She scrambled to her feet, soaked to the skin, skirts dragging heavy behind her. Her chest burned from panic, but she turned back toward the wagon. "Vera," she shouted. From inside the canvas, a little girl poked her head out, eyes wide and terrified. "Mama!" Cora rushed to her daughter and lifted her down. Vera clutched her rag doll, trembling. Cora wrapped her in a blanket and held her close, trying to calm her own breathing. The wagon leaned at a bad angle, half of it dipping toward the riverbank. The mule had bolted minutes ago, spooked by the lightning. Her food, her belongings, her future all soaked or floating away, she backed away from the wreck, keeping Vera tight against her. "We have to find shelter." But she had no idea where to go. They had left Kansas 10 days ago. She had buried her husband in the cold dirt outside Abilene a month before that. Vera had not spoken a full sentence since. Cora pressed a kiss to her daughter's forehead. "We will be all right," she whispered, though her voice was shaking. The river kept rising, and fast. She turned, scanning the horizon, and froze. A rider was cutting across the far ridge, dark against the storm. He rode fast and sure, a tall man on a black horse, his coat flapping behind him like wings. He saw her and pulled his horse hard, angling straight toward them through the rain and muck. She kept her arm around Vera, unsure what to expect, every muscle tense. The rider dismounted before the horse had fully stopped. He pulled his hat off, shaking water from his dark hair. "You all right?" he called over the storm. Cora nodded, but her voice came out hoarse. "The wagon's gone." It tipped. "I have nothing but her." He looked at the river, the broken wagon, then down at Vera. "You have each other," he said. She blinked. His voice was steady, low, and warm. She had not heard a voice like that in a long time. "I am Isaac Granger," he said. "There's a ranch I ride for not far from here. Name's Black Hollow. You and your girl come with me. I will get you somewhere dry." Cora hesitated. "I swear on everything I am, I will not harm you or your girl," he said. "I will get you safe." She searched his face. He looked at her like she mattered. Like Vera did too. That was rare. She nodded once. He stepped forward, offered his arms. "I will carry her if she will let me. You ride." Vera buried her face in Cora's skirts. Cora knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, he is going to help us." "Will you let him carry you?" Vera looked up at Isaac, her bottom lip trembling. Isaac knelt too, slow and gentle, and held out his hand. "I had a little sister once," he said. "She was afraid of storms, but they always passed." Vera reached for him. Isaac lifted her like she was made of glass, tucking the blanket around her again. Cora climbed into the saddle, and Isaac handed Vera up. "I will walk beside you," he said. They rode through knee-deep mud, rain slapping their faces, thunder crashing above. Isaac kept hold of the reins, steadying the horse. He walked close, one arm always near Vera's back, as if he could shield her from the whole sky. It took over an hour to reach the ranch. By the time they got there, every inch of Cora's body ached from cold and tension. Isaac helped her down, then lifted Vera gently back into her arms. She looked up at him. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick. He nodded once. "You are safe now." Inside the ranch house, it smelled like firewood and biscuits and clean cotton. A woman named Ruth brought dry clothes and hot stew. Cora changed behind a curtain and helped Vera into a borrowed flannel nightdress. The girl clung to her, worn out. Isaac waited by the hearth, watching them quietly. Cora tucked Vera into a spare bed in the corner, brushing her damp curls off her forehead. "She is your only?" Isaac asked softly. Cora turned. "Yes," he nodded. "She is lucky to have you." Cora studied him. He had kind eyes, tired eyes, a man who had seen things and carried them without complaint. "Why did you help us?" she asked. "Because you needed it. Strangers usually do not." "I am not most men," he said simply. Cora walked closer. The firelight caught the curve of his jaw, the rough line of his cheek. She could smell rain on his coat. "I know," she said. He looked at her then. Really looked. Neither of them spoke in the days that followed. Cora and Vera stayed in the spare room. Ruth kept them fed and Isaac kept them safe. He brought wood for the stove, fixed Vera's doll's missing button, and taught Cora how to patch a saddlebag. Vera started talking again, first to Isaac, then to her mother. Cora watched Isaac from the window one morning, splitting wood in the pale sun. He moved with quiet strength, not for show, but because it was who he was. Late that afternoon, Vera tugged on Cora's sleeve. "Can we stay here, Mama?" Cora felt something shift in her chest. That evening they sat on the porch, the sky turning orange. Isaac handed her a cup of coffee. Their fingers brushed. "I am glad you came through that storm," he said. She looked down. "I was not sure we would." "I was." She met his gaze. "I saw you standing there, holding her. I thought, if nothing else, I will get them across." He paused. "And I knew I would not let go until I did." Cora's throat tightened. "I carried her," he said, voice low, "but I carried something else too, some kind of promise." She stared at him, heart pounding. "What promise?" His eyes didn't waver. "That I would not let either of you fall." Cora stood. Slowly, carefully, she stepped closer. She reached for his hand, and when he took it, it felt like the answer to every prayer she had whispered into the dark. And for the first time in a long time, she let herself believe in something again. The snow lingered on the high ridges past the equinox, stubborn against the warming earth. At Black Hollow, the pastures were greening, but the wind still carried a bite. Cora stood at the edge of the corral, her hands tucked into the sleeves of a wool shawl Ruth had lent her. She watched Isaac work a young roan, his voice low as he brought the gelding into a wide circle, patient with its skittishness. Vera sat on a barrel not far off, legs swinging, eyes fixed on the horse's every move. She had taken to following Isaac around the ranch like his shadow, asking questions, drawing horses in the dirt with a stick. Cora wasn't sure when the child had begun to sleep through the night again, but it had started here. Isaac spotted Cora and tipped his chin toward the barn. She nodded once and made her way over. Inside, the air was warm with hay and the scent of horses. He followed a moment later, brushing dust from his hands. "I have been thinking," he said, voice quiet. Cora turned from the tack wall. "About what? About where you go next?" She folded her arms. "There's not much open to us. I have no people left and no money to buy land." He leaned against a beam, arms crossed. "Could stay here." Cora's breath caught. Ruth already said yes. "The bunkhouse needs mending. The fence line near the creek is half down. You're good with your hands. And Vera's useful already. She convinced my ornery dog to mind her." Cora let out a breath, slow and guarded. "I don't take handouts. I wouldn't offer one." His gaze didn't waver. "You'd earn your keep." She studied the dust motes floating in the slant of light from the loft. "I never meant to come this far west. We only meant to reach Colorado Springs." She stopped, jaw tightening. Isaac waited without interrupting. She met his eyes at last. He was sick for a long time. There wasn't much left by the end, just Vera and the road. Isaac nodded once. "The road's ended, maybe." Cora's throat tightened. "It scares me how much I want that to be true." He reached out, slow and sure, and touched her elbow. "You don't have to be afraid of wanting something good." Later that evening, Ruth brought out a tin of sewing for Cora to sort. Vera was helping Isaac pull weeds from the edge of the vegetable patch, the girl's laughter rising like birdsong in the dusk. "She likes him," Ruth said, settling into a rocking chair with her mending. "It's more than that," Cora murmured, threading her needle. "She's herself again." Ruth nodded. "He's different with her around, too." Cora glanced toward the window. Isaac had crouched to show Vera a worm he'd uncovered, his smile soft and unguarded. "I don't know what to do with that," Cora whispered. "Let it unfold," Ruth replied. "Some things don't need pushing." That night, as the moon rose silver over the barn roof, Cora found Isaac sitting on the porch steps, boots off, elbows on his knees. She joined him without a word, the boards creaking beneath her weight. They sat in silence for a while, the kind that didn't need filling. He turned toward her. "You ever think about staying put?" "Not until now," he nodded, as if he understood all the weight behind that answer. "I used to think I had to keep moving or I'd drown in the past," she said. "But Vera." She's blooming here. Isaac looked out over the darkened pasture. You both are. She pressed her hands in her lap, fingers curling. I don't want to need you, not like this. You don't, he said. You just want someone to stand beside you. That's different. Cora turned to him, her voice barely audible. And you do that, he met her eyes. I already am. She didn't reach for him then, but she didn't pull away when his fingers brushed hers. The wind carried the scent of sage and wood smoke. Somewhere out there, a coyote called, long and lonesome. But here, on these worn steps in the dark, the world had gone still like it was listening. By late May, the cottonwoods along the creek near Black Hollow stood full and green, their leaves whispering in the wind like a language older than words. The ranch had taken Cora into its rhythm, each day shaped by chores that asked more of the body than the mind and gave back a kind of peace. She rose before the sun, braided Vera's hair, and walked out with a pail to gather eggs while the meadow mist still clung to her boots. Isaac had begun leaving small tasks for her to find tools left by the shed, a coil of fencing beside the gate, a harness needing repair laid across a bench. He never asked, never assigned, just left them where she'd notice and let her choose. That quiet trust settled into her bones. One morning she found him bent under a wagon, tightening a bolt with his shoulder pressed against the frame. She crouched beside him, wiping her hands on her skirts. You always fix things without calling for help, his voice rose from under the axle. Only when I want a reason to talk with someone. She picked up the wrench near his boot and passed it over. That's so, his fingers brushed hers. I figured you'd come looking eventually. I didn't, you did now. She smiled before she could stop herself. This wagon's half rotted. So am I, he said, rolling out and sitting up. But we keep working, don't we? She leaned back on her heels. I never thought I'd feel steady again. You don't seem unsteady now. It's still early. He wiped his hands on a rag, then looked at her in that way he saw more than she said. I learned something once, he said. Hard things don't mean you're broken. Just means you've lived. She didn't answer. Instead, she stood and brushed dust from her skirt. You free this evening, he raised an eyebrow. For what? Vera's been asking to see the old cattle trail, the one that runs along the ridge. I figured we'd take her up before the weather turns again. I'll saddle the horses. That evening, the three of them rode up the slope beyond the outer pasture, where the land opened wide with wind and sky. Vera rode ahead on a short-legged gelding, her back straight as a post. Isaac rode beside Cora, one hand loose on the reins, the other resting on his thigh. She said she wants to sleep outside this summer, Cora said, under the stars. She'd make a fine scout. She says she wants to be like you. He looked over, quiet for a moment. That's a weight I don't mind carrying. The trail curved along a ridge, offering a view of the distant river, still high from spring melt. Cora slowed her horse. That day, she said, her voice low, when you found us, I didn't think anyone would stop. And even if they did, I thought they'd take one look and ride on. Isaac didn't look away. I saw a mother with a child, that was enough. It was more than that, I was frozen, I didn't know where to go, and then you were there, and you didn't ask questions, you just took her. Carried her like she was yours. I would've, he said, voice rougher now. If it came to it, I would have kept carrying her, and you, Cora swallowed. The wind tugged her shawl loose. I heard something when you stepped into that water. I didn't know what it was then. He waited. It was a promise, not in words, in how you moved, every step like you were saying, I've got you. Isaac reached across the space between them and took her hand, slow and sure. I meant it, Cora. And I still do. She held his gaze, and for the first time since her world had come apart, she let herself believe in something lasting. Vera whooped ahead, waving from a bend in the trail, and Isaac loosened his grip to let Cora ride forward. But she didn't let go. Not yet. That night, after Vera fell asleep curled against the quilt, Cora stepped out onto the porch. Isaac stood by the post, arms folded, watching the stars. She joined him. Neither spoke. After a while, she leaned against his arm. I think we're home, she said. He turned and wrapped his hand around hers again. We are. Summer crept in quiet beneath the skin of things. The earth turned warm under bare feet and the breeze softened. At Black Hollow, days began earlier and stretched longer, stitched together by the rhythm of planting, mending, and checking the herd on the higher slopes. The creek ran clearer now. It no longer threatened. It only whispered. Cora stood at the garden fence, a trowel in one hand and dirt on her skirt. Her back ached, but it was the honest kind of ache, the kind that came from doing work that mattered. Vera was in the barn, helping Ruth separate seed sacks, her small voice rising now and then in question. Isaac was out near the east ridge with 2 ranch hands, marking a new post line. He'd asked if she wanted to ride along, but she'd chosen to stay. There were rows to finish, and she liked the quiet. A chicken flapped from the coop with a startled squawk, scattering straw. Cora glanced up, heart still quick to jump at sudden sound. But it was only a hawk overhead, circling lazy in the blue. Later, as the sun leaned westward, she brought water to the porch and sat with her sleeves rolled high, ankles crossed beneath her. She had begun keeping a ledger for the ranch. Ruth's numbers had always been in her head, but Cora liked to see them on paper, neat rows and columns tracking flour, feed, salt, and soap. She didn't ask permission. She just started and nobody minded. When Isaac returned, his shirt clung to his back, streaked with dust. He wiped his face with a kerchief and dropped his hat on the bench beside her. "You missed a calf stuck in the fence line," he said. Gave me a look like it knew it had embarrassed itself. Cora dipped her cloth in the basin and offered it to him. "You ever get tired of doing the same thing every morning?" "I don't do the same thing," he said, taking the cloth. "Some days I chase cattle. Some days I get chased by them," she smiled, setting her ledger aside. "You ever think of leaving this place?" He looked out across the field where the light had turned gold and long. "I did, once, thought about heading south. New Mexico, maybe farther. Figured I'd find something there that didn't hurt to remember." She waited, not pressing. "But I stayed," he said. "Because the herding don't follow the map, and I had things here worth mending." Cora reached for his hand, resting it between them on the bench. "You still think about what you lost, only when it's quiet." "What helps?" He turned toward her. "You do." She looked down, throat tight. "I keep waiting to feel like I belong here, like I've earned it." "You think the land asks that of you?" "No," she said. "But I do." He turned her hand over in his, calloused palm against hers. "You don't see it the way I do. You walked into a place that didn't owe you anything, and you made something steady out of it. You saved that girl's heart. You saved mine too." Cora shook her head slowly. "I didn't save anything." "You did," he said. "Maybe not all at once, maybe not with fire and noise, but with every choice you made to stay." The screen door creaked behind them and Vera stepped onto the porch, holding a jar full of fireflies. "They like the tall grass best," she said. Cora opened her arms and Vera climbed into her lap, resting her head against her mother's chest. Isaac leaned back, one arm draped over the bench, the other resting on his knee. "You know," he said, "there's a little cabin up near the aspens. Roof sound. Needs sweeping, but it'd hold." Cora looked at him, brows drawn. "You thinking of moving?" "I'm thinking," he said, voice steady, "that a man ought to offer a place when he's ready to ask." She felt Vera's weight against her, the warmth of the day still wrapped around them. "And are you?" "I am." Cora didn't speak for a while. The fireflies blinked in the jar, soft as breath, then she said, "I'll help sweep." Isaac met her gaze and nodded once. The light faded slow from the sky, but the promise between them needed no words, no rush. It had been walking beside them every step, quiet as a shadow, steady as the earth beneath their boots. The cabin stood beneath a ring of aspens, its roof patched now and its hearth swept clean. Inside, the light fell soft through the single window, warming the plank floor where Vera sat with a pinewood box in her lap, arranging pebbles and twigs into rows. Her eyes had settled deeper in color, something between river stone and earth. She'd grown taller by a finger's width since the thaw. Cora knelt beside the hearth, arranging kindling for the evening fire. Her fingers moved without thought, but her thoughts were anything but still. The cabin held a hush that belonged to beginnings, and she felt it in her chest like a second heartbeat. Isaac stepped through the doorway with a bundle of dry oak over one shoulder. "Creek's running low enough to cross easy now," he said, laying the wood near the hearth. "I rode out past the ridge this morning, found a patch of wild onions growing against the rocks." Cora straightened. "We could plant some near the porch," he nodded, dusting off his hands. "I'll show you where they are, come next week." She glanced toward Vera, who was now humming under her breath, her game growing more elaborate. "She's been asking about school again," Cora said. "Ruth mentioned a woman who teaches out of her parlor down in the valley." Isaac leaned against the doorframe. "I know the place. 3 miles south, white clapboard with a lilac bush out front." Cora brushed her palms together. "I thought maybe we'd ride down together." "Ask if she has room." Isaac folded his arms, voice low. "You think she'll take Vera?" "I think she might. And if she doesn't, we'll find another way." He smiled, eyes softening. "That's how you think now, like you've got ground under your feet." She met his gaze. "Because I do." He stepped forward, close enough she could smell the sun on his skin, the faint scent of pine from wherever he'd ridden. His hand found hers, their fingers settling together with the ease of long practice. "You know," he said, "I always figured I'd live out my days alone." "Not out of sorrow, just habit. And now?" she asked. "I look at the way you and Vera fill a space, and I wonder how I ever convinced myself that quiet meant peace." She tilted her head. "You want noise now? I want whatever comes with you." They stood like that until Vera called out, asking if they could go find more stones for her collection before supper. Isaac nodded, and she ran out ahead of them, her boots kicking up dust. Outside, the evening was thick with the scent of wild mint and dry grass. They followed the girl past the oak tree where Isaac had strung a rope for a swing, past the fence they'd built together one rail at a time. Vera knelt by the creek, examining stones with the gravity of a judge. Cora leaned back against a boulder, the sun warming her shoulders. Isaac sat beside her, knees drawn up. "She asked if she could call you Pa," Cora said, voice quiet. He turned toward her slowly. "What did you tell her?" "I told her it was up to the man himself." His breath caught, and he looked toward the girl crouched by the water. "I'd be honored." Cora reached for his hand. "Then it's settled." He turned to her, eyes searching hers. "And you, are you settled?" "I am," she said. "With you?" Later, as twilight deepened and the fire cracked in the hearth, Vera curled beneath a quilt on the narrow bed, her lashes brushing her cheeks. Cora sat on the edge, smoothing the child's hair. Isaac stood leaning in the doorway, his shirt unbuttoned at the throat, sleeves rolled to his elbows. When Cora rose and joined him, he opened his arms and she stepped into them like coming home. His chin rested on her hair. She closed her eyes. "I want us to marry," he said, his voice barely above the fire's whisper. "Not because it's expected, because it's right." She didn't answer at first, her heart beat steady against his. "I didn't think I'd ever wear a ring again," she said. "But now I want one that smells like smoke and saddle leather." He smiled against her temple. "I've got a bit of silver I've been holding. I'll take it to the smith." "You don't have to," she said. "I want to." She pulled back enough to look up at him. "Then yes." They wed beneath the aspens, with Ruth holding Vera's hand and a neighbor reading from a worn prayer book. Cora wore a dress stitched from a bolt of blue calico Ruth had hidden away for years. Isaac stood tall beside her, his hair combed back, his hands steady. Vera carried a bundle of wildflowers and grinned through the whole of it. Afterward, they shared bread and stew beneath the open sky, and when dusk came, Isaac lifted Cora's hand to his lips and kissed the palm like it was sacred. They built their life slowly, with fence posts and sunrises, with muddy boots and whispered laughter over washbasins. Vera went to school in the valley and wrote her name in careful block letters. Isaac carved a cradle from pine when Cora's belly swelled again. They named the boy Seth, after no one in particular, just because it fit. Cora kept the ledger still, but now it held more than numbers. It held sketches Vera made, pressed flowers from walks, and notes Isaac left when he rode out early. She kept it not out of need, but love for the shape their days had taken. The rough years didn't vanish. They stayed, tucked into memory, but they no longer ruled her. She had found something better than forgetting. She had found a way forward. And each night, when the fire burned low and Isaac reached for her hand beneath the quilt, she knew she had chosen well. They slept with the windows open, and nothing ever tried to take them again.